Bob.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Hello, folks. Can I please have your attention? Hey, we're going to get started now. My name is Bob Pasella. I'm the president of the DHA, and thank you all for coming to our October meeting. I'm sure most of you are here for the Parks Bond, and we'll get to Jay Vanicki in just one second. A couple of things to Councilman John Hannigan, Councilor Stacey Harris, Councilor Tom Lambert. Did I miss any more elected? Oh, Rob Price, Robert Patrick. Good to see you, Robert. We also have some candidates running for office. Yolanda, I know you're here somewhere. If you want to give us a 2-minute elevator speech, please.
2 minutes or less. I know you have an agenda. Good evening. My name is Yolanda Mack. I'm running for the DeKalb County State Court Judge. It is an open seat. Judge Purdom is retiring. He's done some excellent work, and now he's leaving. I'm from DeKalb County, grew up in DeKalb, Avondale Elementary, Avondale High School. I tell people if you're old enough, it's the first DeKalb Center of the Performing Arts. I currently am the deputy of the Sexual Assault Unit in the Fulton County DA's office. And prior to that, I was the deputy of the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Unit in DeKalb County. So that is my passion. That is my platform. I have over 20 plus years of experience, twice Attorney of the Year, and I'm excited to be here. I'm going to all the community meetings to see what's going on in DeKalb and what the issues are and what the concerns are of the community. I think that's important as an elected.
We can hold it down, guys. Marinelle, are you here?
Hi.
Floor is yours. How you doing?
Hi, my name is Marinelle Lopez. I am running for City Council. My platform is basically I believe in the arts, and the arts can change the world. It changes my life and it changes our community. So I want to see more City of Dunwoody really invest in our arts and have more civic engagement, bring more economic development here in the Georgetown area, as well as bringing businesses that help improve the state of, like museums and other venues and businesses that help kind of make Dunwoody one of the places that folks in the Metro Atlanta want to go to as a destination city. So we don't have to go to other places like Alpharetta or anywhere else to get the great things that we like to do. So that's pretty much my platform. I do believe that with regard to the bonds, I would like to see money allocated more towards arts and towards libraries and to education rather than trails. But that's it. So thank you for your
Thank you. Chris, are you here? Is Chris here? You're Chris?
Yes.
Chris, you have 2 minutes. Give us your elevator speech, my friend. Come on up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I guess this is good timing, so I guess it's a good omen. My name is Chris also. I'm running for City Council man position, post 4, Dunwoody. I relocated from Nigeria in 1985 and spent 35 years in Colorado. Moved to Dunwoody about 3 years ago and loved the city. Actually fell in love with the city. As a result, I want to be part of what would make Dunwoody a great city for everybody. I'm passionate about children. I just became a grandfather. So I'm a grandfather of 10 days. Is gonna be able to get a good education in Dunwoody, just as her mom had in Colorado. I want to make sure that all types of violence is almost eradicated. I want to make sure that there is affordable daycare and preschool for children, especially for low-income parents. So once again, thank you. I'm happy to be part of your community, and I hope to lend my voice to everything positive about Dunwoody. Thank you.
Chris is running against Stacy Harris. Stacy, would you like a couple of minutes?
Thank you. My name is Stacy Harris. I've had the pleasure of being your councilwoman for the past 3.5 years. It has been a little bit of a wild ride. I was sworn in on January 1st, 2020, and then March of 2020 happened. I'm very proud of the actions the city has managed to take during COVID and keep us moving forward. For sometimes it's just the little things. It's these stoplight art projects that we've been able to do. It's having the first ever official concert at Brookline Amphitheater was actually the Peachtree Middle School band that had been virtual all year. You can't unhear that, but that is but that is a lot of the little things that we can do. And now that we're out of COVID, I really look forward to serving you guys for the next 4 years to see where we can go. So maybe it's not the little things, maybe it can be the big things. And that is what I'm looking for. That is why I'm running. Thank you.
Do we have any other candidates running for office or elected officials that we missed? I can't see that far. Tom?
No, but elected official. He walked in after the initial.
Who's that?
Catherine.
Oh, Catherine. You're,
I'm still here.
oh, Tom, are you done interrupting the meeting? All right, one more piece of business before we hear from Jay from the city. This is for board members only. Approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I know it was a couple of months ago, but we sent out the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any corrections? Okay, minutes pass. All right, and without further ado, I want to turn it over to Jay Banicki, who's the Assistant City Manager for Dunwoody. Keep in mind that when Jay comes up here and speaks to you, Jay does not set policy. Jay didn't bring the bonds to the ballot. That is our elected officials. That's not Jay. Jay speaks from the city standpoint. He's not pro. He's not, well, I don't know if he's for or against personally, but that's not what his job is. So Jay,
Okay.
take it away, my friend.
Jay, give me 1/2 second.
No problem.
Guys, folks, just want to remind everybody, my Wi-Fi is stable. That means we are live on the internet. Be in everybody's best interest to act in a way you can, let's be human.
First off, for those that have not met me, I am Jay Banicki. I'm the Assistant City Manager for Dunwoody. I've been here about 4.5 years. I've met a great deal of people in the audience. And just to let you know, Bob's right. On this topic, I'm agnostic tonight. Neither pro nor con. I'm just here to answer questions, more of the technical thing. And for those, all of us know, Sunday is what day? It's football day. Okay? Football day means we watch football. When you watch a TV game, there's 2 types of people that do the TV commentary. One does play-by-play, one does analysis. Tonight, what you hear from me is play-by-play. It's who's moving left, who's moving right. The analyst tells the why, debates the concept of it. I'm not here to answer those questions. I can't. I'm paid for by the moving right. The analyst tells the why, debates the concept of it. I'm not here to answer those questions. I can't. I'm paid for by the city, so therefore I have to be pretty much on topic with this. Now, the second thing, like all good men, you sit down and you go, you know what? I'll print out like 30 handouts, and I got 100 people in the room. So this will be posted on the website either tonight or first thing in the morning. Please pass them out and share them. You don't really need them for what I'm talking about right now, because I'm going to go through just technical stuff. And again, my apologies. It was like I need one for myself. But part of it's just talking through it. Now, the first thing I want to do is there are bonds on the ballot this November. I want to talk the timeline because this has been over a year in the process of getting it on there. And again, you don't need this in your hand to go through it, but just to help you out. Back in March of last year, the city council retreat, out of that grew the concept of reviewing the capital needs of the city. They started to look at it and say, we have these plans. We know we want to build this here and this here. What are the priorities? What should we do? That started out of that retreat in the spring of 2022. Through a series of town halls much like this, and I think we got up to 12 or 13, the council started to look at getting public input on prioritizing those. In May of that year, the council decided at that point not to put anything on the ballot for November of 2022. That was last year. But the thing that grew out of that was a citizen committee reviewing capital projects. And we spent a good 2 months of night meetings with citizens, not even council members, actual citizens. One council member, Tom Sheridan, went through and looked at all the different areas of the city and started to look what the needs were. So that was growing out of there. Then staff presented a review of that, out of that. Then they started to look at it more. And this year, the council put on the November ballot one question. It is a question to the citizens of Dunwoody if they want to authorize up to $60 million worth of bonds restricted to the topics of parks, trails. The trails are part of parks in that situation. That is what this discussion is about, how that came to be, and what are the technical aspects of it. That will be on the ballot in November. I'll also let you know another side one, just so that people are aware. Your ballot will also have a thing called SPLOS and a thing called HOST on it at the same time. The county has a sales tax, which we use, the city, to repave roads, to buy police equipment, and the e-host or the host actually lowers your property taxes. So those will also be on your ballot. So they're all somewhat intertwined in the mechanisms of talking about this. I'll read the question, but I'll read it kind of fast. Shall the city of Dunwoody issue up $60 million worth of park bonds? And here's where it's restricted. This is the legal restriction. It can be used for financing the acquisition, construction, the installation, improvement, or equipment. So that's kind of the legal thing of building anything. Topic 1, parks and recreational areas, 2, green space, and 3, trails. It is limited to those areas. Anything built with these bonds has to be part of those concepts. Now, people have asked about how and who checks it. Even the people that buy the bonds, if they're approved and issued, the people that hold it will want to make sure that this is the governing structure of it. This is what matters most. It is limited to these areas. Okay? Now, let's go into a little bit on how they could get issued. Let's just say they're approved in November, and all $60 million was issued up front very quickly. It won't be in most situations. When you do a $60 million plan, you do like 20 or 25 to start off with, and then the others a little bit later, and you stagger it because you don't need to take out a loan when you're not exactly ready to build it. So in some cases, some land may need to be acquired, so there'll be a delay in it. But even if all 60 million was issued for this in the spring, let's say the spring of 2024, your average house in Dunwoody, your total tax bill, and what we like to use an example, and it's been all the collateral we've been doing for about the past 2 or 3 years, is a $500,000 house frozen at $400,000. We ran the averages for Dunwoody. Your average home here is around $500,000, but your average person bought it long enough ago, they're only taxed at the $400,000 level. So that's your typical home. That typical home's total tax bill should be about $5,200. Now that's for schools, that's for the county, that's for city, okay? Now the city's portion is on that typical home $296. If the bonds were all issued at once and they were all sold at once, that'd be an additional $157. That's your hard number to go with. $296 is, yes ma'am?
How can they say that when they don't even know what the interest rate is?
We actually do have a good bearing on it. We are very similar to other cities, so we have peer cities, and our financial advisor, I saw Doug back there somewhere. Doug waves his hand with me, don't call on me yet. In this case, we know about what we would get. We would get somewhere, if we went to market today, somewhere between 4.25% and 4.75% interest rate. That's 99% confidence level with that. Almost no cities are getting above 5 unless they're financially strapped right now. And if Dunwoody went to market today, we've never had to go to market. It'd be the first time. We'll either be a AAA or a AA. We're in that kind of perfect sweet spot. We're not sure which way it'll go, but we know we'll get an incredibly competitive rate in the open market at this time.
Okay. Does that this is $157, whatever number it is.
157.
Does that include the amortization on the bond itself?
Yes, it does. That is if,
So you're saying that the payback plus the interest are calculated in that $147?
you're correct.
Okay, excuse me, ma'am, I'm sorry. Let's let him get through the presentation, and then we will have a session for question and answers, okay? Thank you.
It's a good point on that, because here's the other thing to know about bonds. Even if the interest rates, and everybody knows that me and Jerome Powell don't talk a lot. That's the chairman of the Federal Reserve. It's an inside joke, okay? Interest rates have been going up, okay? The city is going to issue bonds that even at these high rates in the 4.25% to 4.75%, even up to the 5%, which is high for now, but compared to long ago, still incredibly reasonably priced. The city will issue bonds that at some point could be callable and refinanced, just like each of us refinances our own homes. It can be done that way when these are issued. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about your overall tax bill and just the structure of it. One of the things I talked earlier about was that also on the ballot in November is this thing called the e-host. Okay, the e-host is a penny sales tax which forgives right now your county taxes. If we ever collect enough, it'll start forgiving city taxes, but we're not there yet. So in this case, there's two ways you can look at your tax bill, with that credit or without it. And I'll just leave it out. Just leave out that you pay for what's called a general operating, which is for sheriffs and the candidates running for state court. If you achieve that office, you'll be paid for out of the general fund of DeKalb County. Okay? Now, you also pay for grading. Most people don't know that. Grady gets some of the money from the taxes that are forgiven off that. Your sales tax doesn't support that. Even with that, if you remove those, your tax bill is about 82% school operations. Now, if you include those two credits, it drops the school part. If you issued the bonds all at once, 3% of your tax bill would be for the bonds. That's what it would do. It would be 3% of your total tax bill. Again, it's in the same things we've been doing repeatedly. I'll post this on the website, but it is an increase. There's no way around it. If the voters approve it, you have to levy the tax to pay back the bonds if the voters approve it. Now, let me go to the other thing. And my bond lawyer says I'm supposed to read this statement. The order of the projects does not indicate their priority. The city may finance projects in any order. There is a restriction. It's actually in there here. The restriction is the ones we talked earlier. It's parks, it's green space, and it's trails. Those are the restrictions on this. Now, one thing to know, every single project that would be built with these bonds has to be approved by the city council. It can't just be done magically. So if this happens, a new fund, the bond fund, the whatever year, 2024, 2023 bond fund would be set up. And each time the city council wanted to build, construct, purchase, or improve anything, they would have to approve in a public meeting that project, the details of it, and they would also have to approve the price. It can't just happen without their action at a public meeting. Now, in the supporting documentation for the call to election, in other words, the resolution that made the bonds on the ballot, they did list out 9 areas that are listed as potential aspects. Now, this is one I defer to the elected officials because it was their supporting documentation. But the 9 areas are in parks and green space, Wildcat, formerly known as Roberts Drive, Homecoming, formerly known as Burbank Drive Park, softball fields, Waterford Park, and Brook Run Park. Those are the 5 areas identified by council in supporting documentation. I want to be very technical with that. Okay. The next one is 4 areas of trails within the Dunwoody Village, Winters Chapel Road, North Peach Street, and Mount Vernon. The action of the board said that it's limiting to parks, green space, and trails, and supporting documentation included those as areas. Okay? Again, the elected officials are the ones that will defer to that part. Okay? Let's go through a little bit of timeline. June through October, this is my favorite thing. There's 20 different ads that are put in the paper, and we see copies of them, and I get lost on the schedules. But you'll see in the various things, here's the call for election they are submitted. And on November 7th, there's an election. It's a yes or no question. It's no runoff, no nothing. It's yes or no. Results are known pretty quickly. November, December, if it is approved, and this is the if it's approved part, the financial advisor, our finance staff, myself, will be working on what's called the validation process. We'll be assembling schedules because we're going to take stuff to market. So what happens in that case is the rating agencies, New York, Moody's, Fitch, Standard & Poor, will look at Dunwoody. We'll look at Dunwoody's finances. We'll look at the demographics of Dunwoody, look at the income level, look at the property values. And that's where we get our rating, whether we're AAA or AA. So that'll happen sometime in the spring of next year. Optimistically, the earliest that cash could be had in hand would be March or April. And again, I consider that optimistic, but shovels can be put in the ground at any point once it's approved, because what we know is we can start doing some stuff up front and pay for it with the bond proceeds. So that's the technical part of it, and that's a pretty quick way of doing it. So at this point, I'll open up for questions, but I gotta find a drink first.
Okay. We have some questions for Jay. Let me ask you a few questions first. Okay, so the average household or the average property owner in Dunwoody is paying about $296 a year to the city.
That is correct.
That is this, and the bond will add an additional $157.
If issued all at once at the very beginning.
If issued all at once, so that first year, if not issued all at once, that 157 could be a lot less.
That could be, so for instance, if we issued half of it, then roughly about half. It'd be a little bit, not quite half, but it'd be close.
Would that number actually have the potential to go higher than 157? Somewhere during the course of the 20 years of the bond?
It would be the answer is technically yes, but it would be incredibly tough to. And there's a good thing that you hit on that I need to put in the stem. Your best way to say how we pay for it, let's say you need to pay $1 million a year in your bond and your principal and interest, and 1 mil gets you 1 million. Our digest grows almost every year over the course of a decade. Now, occasionally there are dips. We've, in the entire history of Dunwoody, have had 3 years out of the 15 where there's been a dip instead of an increase. But overall, it just increases. It inches up. You know that because of home and commercial building prices going up. Okay? One thing to mention is if Dunwoody had issued bonds, well, actually, when we voted on it previously, if Dunwoody issued bonds today, the digest would continually go up during the process of this. So your millage rate that's required would go down on average. Now, it's not going to happen every year. That is a given. There's little blips occasionally. But in almost every jurisdiction I've ever worked in, over the course of the 10 to 15 years that you pay back with a refinancing, the millage rate needed goes down. So you start at roughly what we're thinking will be about 1 mil right now, and could go down over the course of a decade down to 0.9 mil. So it would probably go down. Again, your mileage may vary.
Okay. The bond is for $60 million. All the numbers you're factoring in include the interest payments, debt service, all of that. What happens if there's cost overruns for the project? Those projects don't get finished?
What we do is we look for secondary sources. So for instance, in this case, the SPLOST that you're also voting on has a category for parks and green space on it. Council, I think it's $1 million out of that. So secondary sources such as that, or a surplus in the general fund or something above the required fund balance can also be used to do those. Federal matching funds can be used for anything like this. So you are not prohibited from just building it only with bonds proceeds.
All right, one last question, then we'll open it up to the floor. Surrounding cities, Sandy Springs, Johns Creek, Alpharetta, have these surrounding cities passed bonds over the course of their cityhood?
Yeah, those specifically I'd have to remember, but I can even tell you, because we use it as an example, Roswell is the last one that voted on one. They voted on, was it 100 million on 3 different types like last year? It is very common in this area. It's the same as building a house. There's very few people that can pay for a house with cash. So that is the pro to it, is that you can get stuff built faster off of it, and it's a very common municipal operation.
I will say that the DHA is not taking a stance on the bonds, but I will say that if you look around the surrounding cities, this is not something that's abnormal to the city. Sandy Springs has passed bonds, Alpharetta has passed bonds, so this is not something that is just a Dunwoody thing. And with that, Jay, if you want to open it up and take questions, be my guest.
Far back. No, that's right. Yellow shirt. And excuse me, I'm colorblind. So everyone, to me, that looks yellow.
If you're asking a question, you mind, excuse me, sir, excuse me. You mind standing up if you're asking a question, please? Thank you.
What percent of the Dunwoody population, Dunwoody's what, roughly 50,000?
Roughly.
What percent of that population currently uses parks and trails today?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we actually did a community survey that's posted on the website. And it's actually got the, how often do you use trails? It's got those answers. I'm not good at shotgun answers like that, but we do have it on that survey. And I see somebody in the back that's trying to look it up on their phone right now for me.
Great, because I don't know anybody that uses a trail. I'm sure there are. And of course, we like Brook Run and that sort of thing. Okay, what do you use the trails for? Exercise?
I walk my dog and invite my kids to school.
Okay. So, but my point is, I would hesitate to guess that 25% of the population uses parks and trails. We have congestion in this city.
Is there a question in there somewhere?
Is there a question? Yes. Here comes the question. Why are we spending money on just parks and trails? We have congestion. We don't do anything for our senior citizens. We have all sorts of things that Sandy Springs, Roswell, all of those other cities do, and we're gonna spend $60 million on parks and trails?
You're actually answering one of those questions. I cannot, in my position, answer the why. I can answer technical issues, but I can't answer the why off of that.
Does anybody from the city know the answer? I think my only question is, secondly, what we're saying is the city council approves all of these things. My numbers are right. City council is a majority of 4, is that correct?
It would take 4 to pass anything. That is correct, Senator.
Take what?
It would take 4, yes.
So we're turning $60 million over to the opinions of 4 people.
So actually, excuse me, I'll stop you there. You know, we're having a vote on this, so 50,000 people will actually make that determination.
No, but I'm talking about the expenditure itself.
Well, at the end of the day, 50,000 people will determine whether the city spends that money, yes. If everyone votes no, the money's not gonna be there. They vote
I'm
yes.
talking about
it'll be there.
project by project.
Can I answer that? Or can
Erica,
I-
go ahead.
may I-
Hey, again, if you please stand up and identify yourself with a couple of news people that we have in the room, thank you.
So my name's Erica Harris. I've been living in Dunwoody for 18 years. So I personally use the trail every single day. And I can also let you know that I am probably in the younger age group that uses it at the time that I use it. So that's something to know. People are walking their dogs, they're riding their bikes, they're just enjoying it. Their kids are walking to school. I see a lot of the kids from the apartment complexes. They use the, over by the personal park, they use the trails to walk to Beach Tree Meadow and the Chestnut, the Evans walk in there. So it is highly used. In terms of city council being the ones to make the decision, the one thing that I can say that I'm so proud of this city about is their engagement of the community. Email your council member and ask them to be part of these different committees. You will be invited to them. Engage yourself. I have yet to see a project built in this city that has not had significant citizen input again and again and again. And so you can't sit there and say it's being spent with only city council approving it.
Is there a
It's
question?
just not true. No, it's not a question, it's a response. If you're gonna make statements, I'm going to provide a response to it. Be engaged and you will be able to be proud of the outcome.
Thank you. Tom, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Tom Simon, I've been a resident 46 years. So a couple of things. The study that was done by the TAB Foundation, the results. Traffic 30%, crime 26% cited as top concerns among respondents. Traffic congestion, 29.5% responded. Traffic problems. Crime, public safety, lack of police presence, 25.5%. Reserved open space, small town feel, overdevelopment, construction, 15.2%. And this $60 million responded was 9.7% of the people responded out of 100%. Okay, so we're less than 90%. 90% didn't even mention the trails and paths. Okay, and we're going to look to spend $60 million on those, on the paths and trails and parks. Secondly, pursuant to OCGA section 3682-100, the city, this is part of the bond, if you will, the city notifies all interested parties that no independent performance audit or performance review, the bond audit, will be conducted with respect to the bond. However, the city will continue to ensure that bond proceeds are expended efficiently and economically as intended by the bond audit. Essentially, they're saying, give us a blank check, we'll spend it however we want with regard to parks and paths. That's essentially what they're saying here. Okay, that's an answer.
I have a question. What does the red cards mean?
Excuse me. Yeah, what are the red cards?
It means that it's a false statement, it's not a blank check.
Okay, Jay, if you'll.
It is baloney.
As one of those in soccer, just don't hold up the red card to me. I can hold up a yellow and I'll be okay, but don't hold up the. Okay, let me correct one thing about that, the way it is. In the state of Georgia, there could be this weird situation where a city that does not have an annual audit issues a bond. That's why that statement is built into the state code. That's why the waiver is built into it. In my 25 years of municipal government, I've never worked on a place that hasn't waived that. And the reason being we already audit our books annually. It would be paying for 2 audits and being redundant and repetitive, as I like to say. Also, when the bonds are issued, there are bond holders who have the fiduciary duty to review that. So we have kind of a belt and suspenders already, and paying for an extra audit on top of one audit and bond holders is not the efficient way to do it. Also, I decided just to check with bond counsel and our financial advisor, and their entire professional histories also. They remember one time a city doing it, and it was an accident. It is go check every single other one. Because cities do their annual audits, it's already done. And that's the best thing about transparency and accountability, is you can check the audit statements when they're released and it's in there in black and white.
Thanks, Jay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm George Edelstein. I've been living here 33 years. We already have a problem, but we don't have enough police. We have car theft, home theft going up. One time I heard a noise outside, and I found a car in my carport with somebody rummaging through my storage areas. I mean, we have problems here. And now you want to go ahead and build more green space that I really don't think we need, because a lot of Brook Run is never used. The park on North Shelton Road is hardly used. And I honestly feel if somebody's that important to go jogging and hiking and playing tennis, well, hell, I'm not going to do that. I'm 70 years old. I walk with a cane. You're spending money to provide facilities for a handful of people with relation to the population will ever use. I think you're going to invite in people from other communities to use it. Not only do you not have provision for police that we need now, where's the provision for the maintenance of the parks, the police, to make sure that there's no homeless people living there, no drugs coming in, no increase in neighborhood theft? I would be willing to have my taxes go up if it meant having better facilities like police, or perhaps fire department if necessary. But to go ahead and build green space of somebody's idea of grandeur, and then put the burden on the taxpayers who don't want it, or I imagine a lot of us don't want it, I don't think that's appropriate. And you have written over here that you want to constitute approval to increase the millage cap as necessary to repay the bonds. That's an open door. And I really feel like this is really out of line with the perception of what Dunwoody should be to the community that's living here.
Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, two things on
Answer
that.
what you can.
First off, for those, please don't say to me, you are doing this. I'm agnostic in this, okay? If the citizens of Dunwoody pass it, I'll roll with it. If they don't pass it, I'll roll with that. So it's not me on that, first thing. Second thing, the one thing you mentioned was the maintenance of the parks that they're proposing to build. One thing council grew out of this retreat that was somewhat impressive, because I've not seen a council get this proactive. They actually took $3 million and said, let's put it aside for repair over the next 5 or 6 years. They thought ahead of time at looking at not just repairing what might be built, but what we have on here. They should establish that in this summer, basically.
Okay, hold
I
on.
just want to say something
Yeah,
first.
Jerry, go ahead.
If someone has a different opinion than you do, can you please be respectful and not make your little side comments and laughing at them?
Are you pointing at me in particular?
No, I'm not pointing to anyone. I am just
Okay,
asking
just make
that
sure
we
it's a
be
blanket
respectful.
statement, please.
I'm just
Thank
asking
you.
that people be respectful of each other.
Very good, thank you.
Hold on just a second. I just want to say, we do have 4 council people in here, and if at any point in time you want to jump in and say something, just let me know.
I'd like to respond to the gentleman. I have a quick question.
Hold on just a second. We had a few people, hold on, guys, we'll get to you. We had a woman in the back that had their hand, Robert.
Jay, of the $60 million, how much of that will be paid for by non-Dunwoody homeowners? In other words, people, the people who own apartments, the people who own strip shopping centers, the people who own the high rises, how much of the $60 million is going to be paid by them versus how much is paid by Dunwoody homeowners?
To reiterate the question to help people out, how much of that money is paid back by homeowners? About a third is a homeowner's responsibility. 60% of the taxes generated in Dunwoody come from commercial properties or non-homesteaded, meaning people's second homes or rental properties or stuff like that. One thing that people somewhat forget is Dunwoody's tax rate is the lowest in DeKalb County. And it also has what's called a 1 mil exemption. So most homeowners here pay 2 mils of city taxes. It's in 2.04 to be technical. It's incredibly low. And what that does is make it so things are paid for by commercial properties. So Dunwoody homeowners, homesteaded properties would be responsible for about a third of that burden. I'm gonna let Bob pick on people, so that I'm not doing anything.
I just wanted to
If you'd stand up and,
I'm gonna let Bob pick on people, so that I'm not doing anything.
I just wanted to
if you'd stand up and give us your name, please.
Michael.
Michael, can you give us the last name?
Rob. I wanted to respond to the gentleman's concern about police. Were you at the Dunwoody Council meeting this past week?
No,
On Wednesday?
No.
Because the city introduced a $500,000 investment to the city to purchase 9 new vehicles for the police department.
Oh, great.
So the purpose of that, and me telling you that, is number one, so you understand that the investment is gonna happen whether there's a bond or not.
Okay.
You can't conflate police ongoing operations with a park bond. They are totally separate. They are funded completely independently. All of us in this room who live in this city want to be safe.
Right.
Right? So parks are not a reason for safety to be an issue. Look it up on the internet when you have a chance. Google any study where they have expanded parks and trails. The police have not had to increase their presence. There are plenty of studies which show that they've actually had reductions because there's public property where there are people out and about during the day. Criminal activity goes down instead of having it hidden in the woods where people can't be seen. So please don't conflate the two things.
Well, I appreciate you telling me that.
Travis, you had something?
My question was, how much does Dunwoody spend on public safety? Out of our budget percentage?
The annual budget for police this year is, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, it will be $12 million. And to give kind of the thing we've kind of realized over COVID, because we're doing a lot of measurements, because every number, 2019 versus everything else changes. The biggest escalator in budgets in the city of Dunwoody has been police services. Since 2020, the number of pay raises that have been given to keep police salaries competitive, your average police officer and or detective that was here in 2020 has gotten a 38% raise over that time. That's actually cash in hand for them. don't say you, don't applaud me. I didn't do, I'm just here to work with that. But that's to give you where the priorities have been of the council over the past years. We've gotten to the point of doing 2 raises a year because we're starting to look. We look annually and mid-year. Now that cycle is probably going to slow back down to once a year, but they've been focused on that part of it. And that's actually the biggest pressure on the budget for 2024.
Bob Hickey.
Mr. Benicki, I was at the budget committee. I'm Bob Hickey. I've been a resident of Dunwoody for 45 years. I've attended numerous council meetings, budget committee meetings, audit committee meetings, etc. I was at the budget committee meeting a couple of weeks ago. So my question to Mr. Benicki was the police chief request for budget money for next year included in the budget?
Every single department's request is reviewed. And that's a great question.
Yes,
Because I get to explain in context, Bob, remember that, okay? The way the budget process works for the city is we know we have a finite amount of revenue to begin with. And we know that we've got to look at what are the priorities. The first 2 priorities of the police department was fully funding the pay increase they got in August, okay? If that didn't happen, then it has to go away. So that was the first thing that was funded. The second thing that was funded out of the police department was an increase in their health insurance. It was covered by the city. Those are the first 2 things. Now, truth be told, Chief Grogan would like an extra vice squad. He would. The budget committee worked through that and has started to say, let's look at ARP funds as a temporary fix for that currently, because that's what they're looking at. So it's being reviewed, and that's the one thing that was great about the budget committee, was they discussed that with Chief Grogan, and they're working on trying, because it's not, the budget will be approved at the 2nd meeting in October, in working on alternatives or phasing it in over next year as we can work with it.
Mr. Benicki, I have here my notes from the budget committee meeting. In the city finance director's own words, there were $2,597,830 worth of enhancements requested by the various departments. Okay, in those enhancements, the police department requested $1,466,000 for 4 officers and some civilians to support them.
That is the vice squad of what I was talking about.
And none of those, and at the budget committee, none of that was included in the next year budget. Where is the finance director? He was there too, is that correct?
Sure, that's correct. But there's ways to address that during the year. The budget is a.
Second point,
We are addressing this during the year.
Second point, you say there've been 2 pay increases for the police department in 2023. How many pay increases are included in the 2024 budget?
Perfect question. There's currently, okay, give a no hand gestures, please. He's correct. And the reason being, we just did a comp and class review in August. So it was done in August, an adjustment. We actually take all of our salaries that we know and compare them to our jurisdictions, our peers that we compete with. And we adjusted police and detective pay again in a separate thing. And we're doing it basically twice a year. With it being done in August, the first priority is to make sure that we can afford that for the next year. And in the budget committee, we discussed about we need to look at it in mid-year. So it's kind of going to be an annual. We've been doing every 6 months for 3 years because of high inflation that's coming down. Now, it's still higher than it's been historically. But one of the things that council has done that's incredible is doing prudent planning. They're not doing anything with just, let's just do it now. They're looking at stuff for looking at 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And that's one of the things with compensation that we're doing. Check it about every 6 months to see where we're falling. And we're going to go back to doing it annually because we knew at that time we would need to see it.
So I can make a quicker answer than that. There were no pay increases for the police department built into the 2024 budget. So how did the police get their pay increases next year? Or they moved to Sandy Springs? Or do they move to Brookhaven? So I think the gentleman's point was, we have $64 million in our round numbers of our budget that are finite allocation of resources. I'm a part of the No Dunwoody Bonds Committee, and proudly, I've been here 45 years. We are not against parks. Okay? We are not against parks. We love parks. My grandkids play the park. We are against reckless city spending beyond the revenue sources. We want parks and anything paid for out of revenue, not out of bonds. So that's why we're opposed to the park bond.
Do you have anything back to the? Okay, let's see. Marianella, go ahead, please.
So my question is, when I look at the master plan, the 60 million seems to cover just a portion, this, like, what's been said, the parks, the Wildcat, Homecoming, and some trails on the north side. My question is, there seems to be other segments that we're gonna have, if this bond goes through, we're gonna have to keep taking out more bonds, correct? In order to finish the rest of the projects that have been started. And that what concerns me, especially I work for Corners Outreach, I'm working with a lot of Latino low-income families that are not represented here. Oh, when I look at the master plan and when I look at the trails, a lot of the trails they seem very for leisure and for convenience in certain areas, but not for the people who really need, or are pedestrians who need to get from place to place on the outskirts of town. So I guess my two questions are, how are we gonna fund the rest of the projects? And two, when is it gonna be that the folks who need it to get to work, need it to go to the grocery store, need it to go to school, when will they get prioritized? Because they actually need to use this because they don't have other ways to get around. I have to pick up our kids to take them to choir practice in a 16-passenger van. So how are we gonna do those two things?
All right, thank you for your question. I'll get part of it, or at least you want to get it first, Tom?
I'll let you go first.
Okay, first things first, let's go with this. I need to be transparent. The city of Dunwoody has got a $2 million grant program from its federal funds, and we are actually giving money to Corners Outreach, so I actually know your operations incredibly well, and I praise what they do there. That's one of the things the council started looking at was using this federal money to assist in ways that could. Your main question was, what do we do with the second parts of the project? Part of bonds, when cities do them, is not to build everything we would want in one fell swoop. It will never happen in any city anywhere in the United States. They do it in plans. So for instance, Brook Run, it will be part of, am I correct, Brent, part of phase 2? So we have phase 2. So it'll be things like that that are needed now. There was a lot of citizen input during that citizen capital committee that was great, saying, we need this, we don't need this. The thing that raised out of that, like cream to the top, was softball. Okay, that became a vocal priority. I'm not looking for applause. That became one of the things that raised there. So things get built, and then things may never get built again. Or people may say this is great, and they may approve more bonds. It's a thing for people in 10 years to decide. Did that get to your question?
And not really, because it doesn't tell me.
Go try again.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It just doesn't tell me how we're gonna prioritize the folks who aren't represented in this room. How?
Let me take a step back. Okay, so your main question is on the trail, so I'll start there. Okay, there's 4 trail segments on the bond project list. One of them is on Winters Chapel Road, which is the east side of town. And that is gonna be an important segment in connecting all the residents in that side of town to the commercial district there by Peeler and Winters Chapel Road. So we are addressing that. Another segment is North Peachtree Road. There are a number of, we have 2 schools and our flagship park there. Okay, we get a lot of concerns from people that live in the apartments there, live in the neighborhoods there, that their kids cannot walk safely to school. We are addressing that. It's going to be a gateway into the city project, but it's also going to allow those students a safe route to school. It's going to allow the families in the area a safe route to the park. The other 2 trail segments are really getting people to destinations, getting people to the Dunwoody Village, and getting people basically connecting a good portion of the city to those areas. So those are the 4 trail segments. So they're kind of dispersed all across the city and really address all the residents.
Yes, and I thank you for that. I do know that there is a scope of that, there's a 12 segment in that area. However, we have to take out, that would be in the future after this bond, if it's approved.
No, the bond is to construct those projects.
So the bond would be, like, some of that funding would be for that project, for that area.
Exactly what I just said, yeah, those, yep. As well as we're investing into Waterford Park, which is on the east side of town. I'm trying to think of other things in that area. Obviously, Homecoming Park is more on the eastern side, but quite frankly, we don't have a park in that part of town. We have Brook Run on this side of town, on the this side of town as well, yeah, so, yeah.
Okay, it's just when I see where the trails are gonna be, those trails.
So what you need to separate, and I think there's a lot of confusion, is because they were approved right around the same time, is the city adopted a master trail plan. That really is separate and distinct from the bond. So that is a 20 to 30-year vision of where the city we'd like to get to, is a plan to get there, okay? But right now, as far as the bond goes, we are not, that is a separate document. The bond is for our trails or the four that I just mentioned.
If I could add just one more thing, I'm John Higgins, City Council. If we look at the Winter's Chapel Beach Industrial Area, we have completed every piece of sidewalk in the city limits so that the residents in that section of town can walk to either Tilly Mill or the other. There's still segments of the community in Brookhaven and Doraville that are still vacant. We're working with Robert Patrick and federal funding to get those done. So City of Dunwoody has completed every sidewalk and every major path in order to facilitate those walking trails. We're still, and I'm lobbying Robert, two people down from me, we've talked. We're looking to get segments done to complete that so that people from Winter's Chapel can walk to Tilly Mill without walking through mud paths. That's in the plan as well. That's in a city councilman's plan, talking to his constituent fellow elected officials.
Well, one more thing too, I just want to toss out there, this is, again, separate and distinct from the bond discussion. Right. However, the city has, using the ARPA funds, the CARES funds, the federal government designated to cities, we have set aside money specifically to address green space along that corridor. We are actively looking to develop a park in that specific area where those apartments are, where you're addressing, and so that is actually already been approved by the council, the money's designated, we're just trying to locate the appropriate place.
And I can even add to that, even last week, we were going around about every 2 weeks trying to identify properties that one we can actually turn into a park, but that area, it is specifically designated for what is currently underserved.
So that.
Sir,
Anything.
if you can stand up and tell us your name.
I'm Jim Eversole, a resident here for over 30 years. So that anything that's in this, identified in here as the Dunwoody Village, the North Winter Chapel, North Peachtree, Mount Vernon, none of other sidewalks that are needed are in here, is that correct? I run over, you can almost run over on a couple of streets. Every day you can almost hit a citizen walking in their neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood that has virtually no streets that connect to Mount Vernon. I would much rather see money go for those individual sidewalks in a number of these subdivisions. But that could not happen if I read it.
It wouldn't be funded with the bond right now, but we have a sidewalk plan that's funded through SPLOST. And we are working on getting sidewalks where they're needed. I mean, I think the point that you raised is the exact reason why we're trying to do trails, is we're trying to get people safely to their destinations, trying to allow them to walk.
To get to the Mount Vernon Trail, you can hit a lot of people going down Dunwoody Court Forest. Okay, that's a huge cut through street, as we all know, and around Trowbridge and a number of other places. A lot of people get taken out walking on these seasons, there's a lot of stories going through, but it would not be covered, correct? So I'm voting for something that allows you to allocate $60 million in areas that I don't need. I can walk Mount Vernon, I can get to Dunwoody Village, which I do. But I can't, it's hard for anybody to move for some of these other side streets.
Kind of, I'm gonna,
There's no money for that.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm gonna just refer back to something that Jay said, is that if money was limitless,
right,
and we could wave a magic wand, we'd do it all tomorrow, okay, but it's not. And so what the city did is we had a citizens committee that worked intensely over 2 months, and then a couple months later had their final meeting to develop a prioritized list, because we had a pretty long wish list. It was 104 projects. They were able to distill that down to the 9 that are on the bond list today. And that was what the residents told us were the priorities for the city. And that is why those projects were determined. That doesn't mean the other projects aren't important. That doesn't mean that there isn't a plan to maybe address those in other ways.
But this money cannot be taken and used for this other. That's another thing.
That is correct, yes. That is a correct statement.
So I'm voting for widening the sidewalk that we already have on Mount Vernon, which a lot of people use. It's not like it's overflowing with people running and riding bikes down through there. But I do walk it, I can. But I can't walk to the back of my neighborhood.
There are segments of Mount Vernon that do not have sidewalks.
Right.
All right, Tom, go ahead.
I go back to the actual ballot itself. The ballot does not mention the four paths, and it does not mention the 5 parts. It says they can use it for acquisition, construction, etc., of paths and trails. So basically, official voting language does not require the city officials to spend bond proceeds on any specific project, and with no audit requirement expenditure, going back to what Mr. Benicki said. And basically, it's no audit or performance review. So we can't even review their performance. But they can spend it. City council can spend this money, $60 million, on any project you deem is necessary and needed, not on these that you mentioned. Correct? Correct?
What I can tell you is this, is that the project was, I can explain why, I'm not a lawyer, okay? But the line that you're referring to is there, it's for a reason. It's so, let's say, and I'll just make up a random park, because I don't want to have people say that Tom said that this park has this problem. So let's say, right on this space, we were gonna build a park, okay? And as we started construction, we found out that 6 inches below the ground, there is 30 feet of bedrock. And in order to construct the park that we want, would cost an extra $100 million to blast all that bedrock. Would it be responsible of us to add that burden to the citizens? So what that waiver does, or not, it's not even a waiver, it's that the bond language does, is allows the city the flexibility to use the money that you're that you're allowing us to issue in the most appropriate manner and to get the most out of it. The city has, you know, I have to be careful, but what I can tell you this is that actually I don't think I can.
I'll play lawyer for you to stop you if you can.
Well, I guess my question goes back again. So what you just said, you're gonna work on Dunwoody Village, Winters Chapel, North Peachtree, and Mount Vernon. You're gonna do those projects. But if $100 million project comes up in one of them, you're gonna stop those and do something else. Or are you gonna spend it on whatever project you think is necessary in the past or the park? It's either yes or no.
Are you asking?
I'm
one person, I can't answer for the entire council.
Well, Jay.
But you voted to put it on the.
Hey, Tom.
You voted to put it on.
Yes, I did, and I voted, and we put a project.
So my question is.
I voted for a project,
You're
let's
gonna
put
do
on
these
there.
9 projects only.
So here, I'll jump in with this. So, Rob Price, Dunwoody City Council. The intention with the supporting documents is that we are intending to use the money if it is voted and approved by the citizens for those projects. That's the plan. There are no plans for anything else. Tom raises an issue. I'll bring up a simple one. Let's just say there's another geotechnical issue that would just make the project prohibitively expensive. I won't even say what it is. It would be irresponsible to then waste that money. At that time, the decision would be drop the project or identify a new project. But as Jay pointed out earlier, everything will be done, every individual project will be approved in city council meetings with public input. So I think if an issue were to come up, there would be plenty of publicity to let folks know, hey, we really wanted to do the whatever project, it's just not gonna work. We're trying to decide what to do next, share your thoughts.
I appreciate you, Ms. Thompson, but I still go back to my statement. You can spend the $60 million on any project you want. You desire that you think is necessary and appropriate.
So if I were to do that, I would justifiably be voted out of office. You could say, we said 60 million, you said you're gonna do projects, you did these other 8 projects instead. You would justify the
And I'll say that for me too. Listen, you know, I think that this comes down to trust, and I think that the city of Dunwoody has built up that public trust in the 15 years that we've been in the city. We've delivered on everything that we promised the citizens, right? And so I'll second what Rob said. If we don't do what we said we do, put me out of office, right? Because that is our intention.
In all due respect, I understand your answers. I still think that you can spend on it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm hoping city council can help with this question. I've heard a couple of times concerns or recommendations rather that the parks, the land that we've acquired for parks, be built out of general funds. Could you provide a history or some examples of how, for example, Brook Run Park is what Brook Run Park is today?
Yeah, I can do it, and I'll move up here so everyone doesn't have to crane their necks and twist their backs. Yeah, so first of all, just in general about parks, the city has, I think we have some pretty good success stories that we can point to. Brook Run Park, Two Bridges Park, a number of other parks throughout the city, and the ball fields over there. And those have become possible by the city, sometimes a little luck, and sometimes it's more often the city being very resourceful, using available funds that were available at the time, whether that be grants, whether that be taking advantage of a land swap that we did with the school system, whether it be Cab County Park funds that the city was entitled to. And so we've been able to be very resourceful with some of those things to construct the parks we have today. Looking forward, that path is not there for the projects that we have now, okay? And so you asked about constructing it out of general funds. So the parks that we have really were not built that way. Those were built with other sources that were available to us. Why do a bond? I'm going to get into bond 101 here, and I'm sorry, but I think it is a very good question. There's basically three ways that the city can finance large capital projects. And as I think Jay or somebody alluded to before, I might be misaccrediting this, that 70% of all local capital projects are funded with municipal bonds. This is not something out of the, actually, I think it was you, Bob, that pointed it out. This is not something that's out of the ordinary, and there's a very good reason for it. It offers the lowest financing costs available to cities to finance large capital projects. It's just like buying your house with a mortgage. It's not irresponsible to do that. You don't have all that money sitting in your pocket. So you find another way to finance it. There's three ways that the cities can finance projects. You said take it out of the general fund. Okay, well, as has been pointed out, there's not millions of dollars sitting left over in the general fund. What some cities do is if they have a particular project they want to build, and let's say it's a $6 million project, they will raise the millage rate that year to get the funds needed to build that project, okay? That's not an option for Dunwoody. Our cap is 3.04. We are at our millage rate cap. We cannot do that. Even if we were able to do that, it's not a very good way of financing projects because you're putting a tax burden for a long-term investment that generations of your residents will use on a single year's taxpayer. So that means I live in Dunwoody today. I'm paying for that entire project all up front at one time in 1 year, and then somebody that moves into Dunwoody next year gets to use it, and they haven't contributed to that. So that's the first way. It's not a very good way of doing projects for cities. The second way is the pay-as-you-go method. The save, we're going to sock away some money every year, and we're going to save up, and then once we have the money, we're going to build that project. That is also not a good method, and I'll tell you why. Historically speaking, building cost inflation far outpaces the cost of financing, far outpaces it. In addition, financing costs are fixed. So we're locking in at a rate that we know today, as opposed to rolling the dice. So it may take us 10 years to set aside enough money to build one of these projects, okay? In that time, every taxpayer in Dunwoody, a portion of their taxes is getting set aside for a benefit that hopefully we can build sometime in the future, okay? So let's say for the next 10 years, I'm a Dunwoody resident, and part of my money is getting socked away for that, and then I move. Well, guess what? Now I've paid for a project that I don't get the benefit of. So I'll get to you in 1 second, okay? So that's why that's really not a good option for cities. The project ends up costing a lot more money, and it takes a long time to build. You're gonna have to wait 10, 20 years to save up the money to do that. So the final option is bonds. So why are bonds attractive? They offer the lowest financing rates available to cities, much lower than traditional financing costs. Those rates are fixed. Excuse me, I just hit puberty here. Those rates are fixed, and it offers the most equity. So we are issuing bonds, if approved, for a 20-year period. So over the next 20 years, the residents that live in Dunwoody pay a small fee every year for the next 20 years that is going to build these projects, okay, that they get to use. And guess what? If somebody moves here in 10 years, they're also contributing to the cost of that project. So multiple generations spread the cost over a period of time. The biggest benefit is we get the money today. We don't have to wait 20 years to build it. So we can build these projects today. We can improve the quality of life in our community today. We can add the amenities that our residents are asking us for today. So bonds very clearly win out over the other ways that city can finance projects. So that was a little bit of a long answer, but it was a good question, so I wanted to answer it appropriately.
All right, Michael.
I just wanted to respond to the gentleman's comment earlier about the bond, right? I wanted to know if you were aware of the amount of the bond that the state of Georgia just floated. Do you know the amount of the bond that the state of Georgia just floated?
I heard, but I don't know.
$671 million. So the citizens of the state of Georgia elected Brian Kemp to approve that bond at 53% of the vote. Our city council has an 86% approval rating. So to the comment that the gentleman made before, if you don't like what was put in the bond and you don't like how it's being managed, feel free to vote people out. But the rest of us have overwhelmingly trusted city council to handle things properly. Thank you.
Brian,
Hold on a second. Yes, sir. You give us your name.
You know, we talk about this spending of money. It's like the federal government. I mean, we've got serious problems with just spending money. And even when we don't have it, we spend more, right? That's what's happening with the economy right now. We can't even work spending $1 trillion in interest. I can't even fathom that. And I know everybody wants to have the good things for their family. I look at the city of Dunwoody and the amount of parks that we've got already and that are terrific. It beats any of the other counties, except maybe up in Newcastle. They've got the land, we don't. So if the issue is spending money, why not do a $20 billion deal and see how it goes? And then if you need to spend more, do another bond issue. At least be practical with the thing. It's so easy to go do these things. It seems like in the bureaucracy, when you guys make the decisions, we have to live with them, right? Because you're making the decisions. You may get input, but it seems like sometimes the input isn't as good as it should be. Okay?
Yeah.
Janet Zipper. I just want to respond to the survey comments that are numbers that you quoted earlier. I happen to work in market research. I've done it for 34 years. Data can be interpreted in a variety of different ways. So you did quote some of the data, and there was a specific question on the survey that said, would you support the construction of a trail if it would run next to your home? And 55% of the people who answered the survey said were in support of it, versus 38% opposed and 10% were uncertain. So I don't know the total number of people that completed the survey, but he quoted a number that said that 9% of people said that the trails were the most important thing. And it's all in the context of how you look at the question. If you look at safety and security and education, of course, those are things that citizens are going to vote as being more important. But when you ask them in a different way, if they support, in this case, the trails, 55% of the citizens who took the same survey said they weren't supportive of it. So I just thought it was important.
If it went by your house.
Yes.
I don't think it's a real trails by your house.
Okay.
Denny, to answer your.
And you know what? You have a chance to vote the way you do during the election, but this is saying that the majority of people at this moment are supporting this type of investment in the city. So.
Denny, to answer your question,
I just am for citing the data.
I know.
Citing the data.
I respect your answer, and I understand it's 55%. My problem is in that survey, they never asked one important question that they should have asked. Are you willing to spend $60 million for paths and parks? And the answer would have been, I think, a lot different from the 55.
That's why you voted.
So, everyone, just real quick, because the question was asked, where is this number coming from? What Janet's referencing is in 2023, the city did a community-wide survey. Probolski, is that the company? They're based in, I think, California. They're a nationally recognized data company. They do surveys all over the place. Very reputable. This is a scientifically significant. What's the term?
Statistically significant.
They surveyed the
Yeah.
500
So as she pointed out, we didn't just ask the softball question, do you support trails? We specifically went to even if it goes by your home. And because the reason why that was asked is that was the hot button issue. Well, I like trails, but not in my front yard. So we specifically asked and then there was another question in that same survey. The gentleman asked about how many people use trails. I didn't have the exact number in my head. The number I thought it was correct, but I wanted to make sure I didn't misspeak. There was a specific question on the trail that said, how often do you use Dunwoody's trails? 68.4% said once a week or more. So just to answer the question.
So you're saying 30,000 people use it.
I'm answering the data from the survey. That 68% of our population uses the trails once a week or more.
I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to let Denny has a question, but the purpose of the meeting is to ask questions, not give opinions, because we'll all have one and we'll be here all night. Denny. Mayor.
One of my favorite opinions is that's my favorite Italian right there. None of you got that, do you? Okay, you all know who I am, and I was the co-president of the group that founded the city. And, I knocked on every one of your doors, and I'm sure he said, here comes that cat lady again. But, that's okay. We won by 82%. But, one of the things we told the people is, we will be good stewards of your tax dollars. And that's one of the biggest concerns that people have. We had a group that ran against us called Dunwoody No, and we said, you're going to raise your taxes, you're going to do this. I said, we're not going to do that. And we didn't do it. This last year, the council did raise the taxes up to the max. And we put that in there, that bylaws, that everything that we couldn't get above because we didn't want to become a city, and the next day, everybody said, oh, gee, now we got the power. Robert's right here. He was one of the guys that wrote all this stuff. And we'll just raise the taxes. So he did raise the taxes, and I think it's about to 10.5% increase. And okay, I don't have a lot of problems with that, because inflation is eating you alive. But Jay, I got some questions. What was the tax digest in 2009, and what is it today?
I don't have any of my numbers in my head at that
Come on,
time.
Jay. Come on, you're a number guy.
Usually I'm good with that, but I honestly couldn't guess it without digging through my files right now.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I'm usually good at quiz shows.
That's one of the things you gotta remember, folks, is that we did not raise the tax rate every year, but they have what they call the blind tax rate increase. When your property values go up, the city gets more money coming in. The tax digest determines how much gets coming in. And most of the increases since we became a city really is at the 2.74 level, not at the 1.74 level that I pay and you pay, Robert, and Noah, and this good lady right here from the council pay it. But so that's one of the things you gotta consider is, are we being good stewards of our tax dollars, Do you want that, the original plan that we had when we started the city is we were gonna connect the city east, west, north, south. And not just for the citizens here, but we were gonna connect it through Doraville, we were gonna connect it through Sandy Springs, hook up with Sandy Springs and Doraville, down here, Brookhaven, Chamblee, so that the people could, if you will, jump on their bike, and if they wanted to, eventually go down and hit on the big trail that goes around the whole thing down there in the city. I'm trying to think of the name of it. Beltline. And, and get someplace. It wasn't just for inner travel, And right now, we're connected all the way to the main part of the perimeter mall,
all the way back over here to, Brook Run Park, east-west. We are connected there. Once you get in there, once you get into the, main part of the perimeter, it couldn't be done because people that bought that property, haven't built anything. That's part of their contract. Jay, you're a numbers guy, I know that.
I do have your other number. I had to look at it with my big old thick glasses on the tiny phone.
Okay. What was the tax?
The first tax digest of the city back in 2009 was, and please forgive everyone if I'm staring at something not reading it right, $2.4 billion, $2.4 billion in 2009. Investments in the city have now, for the current digest, are, hold on, this is today's modern world, scroll with your thumb.
Scroll with me.
Yeah, scroll with me, everyone. It is up to 3.7 billion. So that's the change over the lifetime. That is gross M&O.
That right here? Okay, so all of you understand that even though the tax rate didn't go up, the city got more money. You understand? And the state has a rule that was put in by Governor
Barnes.
It says that if you're gonna get more taxes next year, you gotta have 3 meetings every year. I used to call it public hearing. But anyway, so there's some things here you gotta understand that the city has gotten tax increases every year. Well, no, there's a couple of years that actually went down. Back in 2012, 13. Another question I got, the $60 million, if you compound that out at 4.25 or 3/4, what's the total cost of the bond?
93 million.
93 million?
Pretty close. That sounds like they're reading my piece of paper.
It is 93 million?
Yeah, if it was all issued at once, yeah.
So now you got a $93 million out there. So you just remember that. The other thing is, R&M. Are those figured into the $60 million? Because every time you build a park, the next day you've got to start replacing and maintaining that park. Is that built into the $60 million?
It is not built into it, but that's why the council at the retreat separated out the general repair fund. So now they put in a capital project where there's $3 million allocated over the next 5 years for repair and maintenance. So they've already taken care of it.
Where did that come out of?
It came out of general fund above 6 months an hour, and they did it this summer.
That was an investment we got money from. We need to do more of that. If you take this tax increase, 10.5%, that tax increase is about a 54-56% increase for the citizens of Douglas. And I hear, hey, you got a low tax rate. There's nothing, that's not a sin to have a low tax rate, folks. That's not a sin. That is not a sin. Something to be proud of rather than people staring down. Parks. I've said this a million times. You can have a lot of parks, or you can have maybe not as much parks and have quality parks. Brook Run is quality. We built that thing for strictly quality. And by the way, we were a checkout car when we were done, $7.5 or $6 million. So, we've got to look at what these folks are all telling you here that, we need a trail, I say northwest, east, south, that's what we need. North, south, east, to connect other people. I think that's very important. If you just build public trails, we talk about green space over here we're talking about concrete. Which one are we want? We can have kind of a combination. But let's be very smart about what we're doing. And when you raise your hand, and by the way, here's the alphabet of Roswell Herald. You all familiar with that paper? The same publisher that publishes the Douglas Prize. September 21. Here's the co-headline on the paper. Bond payments nudge Roswell tax rates off. So it's not going to be a free ride out there. It's not going to be a free ride. And those are the things you've got to consider when you tell the citizens. And you've got to tell the citizens exactly what you're doing You know, like, I haven't seen $93 million anywhere, in any of your totals. So what is the total cost of the bond issue? Is it 60 or 93 million? It's 93 million. Be truthful with the citizen. That's all you gotta do. Okay, thank you.
Bob, can I make?
Hold on, Jenny, is your 40-minute presentation?
I'll live with that. Actually, Desmond wants to ask a question first, and then I do have a comment I want to make. Actually, if you.
I just wanted to make one quick clarification. When we all purchase our homes, if you bought a $500,000 house, it actually costs you $650,000. But you say you bought a $500,000, I mean, you bought a mortgage at $500,000, it costs you more than $500,000. It's no different than, I'm just saying, unless you pay all cash, everybody does this. It's no different when you buy a car, when you buy, I mean, I don't care.
Right.
No car, no money, but like, you know, it's not buying. That's all I'm saying.
Bob, can I make a few comments? May I? Okay. Listen, it's obvious there's a lot of opinions on this issue, not only in this room, but across the city. And you know what? That's fine. Opinions belong to you. They're yours to do with whatever you want, okay? You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm not going to begrudge you of that opinion. But the facts, those are something that we all share, okay? And if we're gonna have a good community debate, we need to agree on a common baseline of facts. I do a lot of independent research and studying to try and improve my ability to serve this city. And I came across something this week from a professor from the University of California regarding, and the statement really rang true to me this week, and it was that the foundation of our democracy is creating an informed electorate. And I think that is critically important. The residents deserve to know the truth. The voters deserve to know the truth so they can make an informed decision for what's best for them. And whether it is yay or whether it is nay, that decision should be based on facts. So with that said, I feel an obligation to correct some information that is not factual. And so I'm just going to go through this one by one, and I'll be happy to take your rotten tomatoes and eggs and slings when I'm done. But I'm going to make you a promise that everything I say is fact and verifiable. Okay, so this is not my opinion. This is all based on fact. Okay. There is a claim by one of the groups that the supermajority, 93% of Dunwoody citizens do not want multi-use trails. This is fabricated. It's made up. Please, Mr. Hickey, I'll address you in a moment. Okay, and again, I can say it's fabricated because the person who created it admitted as much. In the September 18th Rough Draft newspaper, they were doing an article on both sides of the bond. And in that article, they referenced Tom Simon, leader of the Vote No Dunwoody Bonds Committee, was asked to back up this claim. And this is a quote from the article. Simon acknowledged that the graphic included in the Vote No website incorrectly states that 93% of Dunwoody citizens oppose multi-use trails. Now, that's bad enough. Okay, maybe they made a mistake. That article was published on September 18th. Today is October 1st. If you go to the Vote No Dunwoody website, that statistic is still there. 4 days ago, I got this flyer in my mailbox. That statistic is still there. 2 days after the article was published, I got an email from Mr. Simon with a flyer with that same 93%. Listen, if you made a mistake, I get it, but when you acknowledge it's false, please correct the information. I have something else I'd like to talk about.
Just a second. All right.
I'm responsible for the No Dunwoody website. Mr. Simon had no responsibility for the website. If we made a mistake in there, we're happy to correct it. Every document, every statement in the website is backed up by a city document. Here is the document that's in the Path Foundation report of February 8th, 2023.
And what does it say?
And it says, exactly like the website said, it says 93% of the Dunwoody citizens, based upon a Portland, Oregon study, what says now, 93% of the Dunwoody citizens would use the trails no way, no how. That's 33%. or 60% said interested but concerned. That's exactly what we say in the website.
Okay,
Wait, Tom, so, that's what I said, but I would be happy to correct the website.
Well, because what you were referencing was not a Dunwoody survey. It was a survey done, as you mentioned, if you say Oregon, I'll trust that. I don't know the exact source of it, but what it is referencing is the confidence of people to ride their bike on a street. And the 93% know how, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm not gonna butcher the numbers. What that was is, what is the amount of confidence, and I don't remember the exact numbers, it was basically like 1% is fearless. They'll ride their bike on the street regardless of the condition. There's a bike lane, whether it's Interstate 285, they don't care, they're gonna ride the bike. The other, I forgot the second category, it was something like, yeah, they're cautious. It was probably about 8 to 10%.
We would be happy to change the website.
Okay,
If
well,
the path survey that they cited.
that has nothing to do with Dunwoody residents saying they do not want trails. It has to do with people.
The path survey was made.
I'm trying to explain what that survey is talking about. I'm trying to let you know what that survey is. It has nothing to do with Dunwoody residents.
Wait, the one that the path survey did on between December.
Hold on, just a second. Kathy wrote that article and she said that was a survey of Portland, Oregon residents.
That's exactly right.
Right, so it has nothing to do with Dunwoody.
It's not Dunwoody residents. It's a survey a decade ago about.
Well, what's the relevance of bringing that up?
Because the relevant bringing it up is we would change the website if the path survey that was conducted of Dunwoody.
Okay.
Listen, if you want to know Dunwoody's.
No, hold on. Look, we're gonna have to go back and forth on this all night long, and we're not gonna do that. Hold on, sir. I was on the Path Foundation sounding board. I didn't have a yes or no vote. I have no opinion on it, but I will tell you, we took no survey or had any sort of facts relating to that. Just didn't happen. Just did not happen.
So in the path survey.
I'm telling you, that did not happen. I will give you the contact information, with Greta. You can speak to her directly. It just never happened.
All right, we'll move on to that particular topic. I have others.
All right, Tom, let's just cut it off.
Well, I have something.
I understand, but we're not gonna do that tonight. No, we're not gonna do that. Sorry.
You have a chance to respond.
We can cover this. He's gonna dispute it. You guys are gonna dispute it. Where are we gonna be at the end of the day?
Well, I have facts.
Facts will be facts.
Give the gentleman over at least 20 minutes to speak.
Let
the council speak, all right?
Earlier. So my question comes back to, if you guys go through this argument all day long, you can do it in city council, all the rest of you, I'm happy with that. Can the bond issue that you're gonna issue, that we're gonna approve for 60 million, could that switch from the path to other sidewalks?
I'd like to hear
No.
the facts from
Something
the
else?
council members.
If you think it's good, if the city council.
Can we let the council member
Can we hear the
please
facts
speak the
from the
facts
council
that he's
members?
provided?
Can we just wrap up with this and be done?
It's 5 o'clock.
I think this is important.
Chance to respond. The gentleman in the back, about 20 minutes.
What I would also.
Bob, I listened to the questions, and this answers a lot of the questions that were answered
I'll go
tonight.
first, and we'll give you a chance to count.
Okay, Mr. Lambert has some questions and concerns about the facts on the website, which my 12th grade granddaughter did, based on the information I can put in. Mr. Lambert has some.
Why are you blaming your
I'll
granddaughter?
be happy to meet with him, give me the information, and we'll make
Come
it.
on, man. Come on, man.
Tom, you have
I think all right, I have a couple of very important points I want to raise. I'll limit it to 2 or 3, because these are critical. And again, I'm just trying to create facts.
Come on, let him speak.
Okay, on their website, they have in capitalized and bold red letters that voting for the bond is defunding police. Okay, I'm gonna read off, we talked a little bit about this, but I have the numbers here, okay? In 2020, the city council, we allocated in the budget 9.19 million to police. In 21, 9.48. In 22, 10.35. In 23, 11.01. And budgeted for 2024, and I will put the asterisk there that this has not yet been approved by the council, is 12.2 million. Okay, those range from 36% up to the 2024 budget, 40% of our total operating budget dedicated to the police department. Every year, those numbers have raised. That is not defunding the police. That is giving them all the resources they want. I have served on the city's budget committee past 3 years, not this year. I rolled off this year, so I can't comment to this year. I was the chair last year. Each of those years, I sat across the table from Chief Grogan and asked him, looking directly into his eyes, is there anything the police department needs that we have not funded? He said, no, we are good. So I just want to make that crystal clear. We are not defunding the police. I also want to make clear that the bond cannot be used by law to fund operational expenses. The police department is budgeted, funded out of our operational expenses. It can only be used for capital projects. Our capital needs for the police department are funded out of SPOS. And over the past 6 years, we have allocated $5.048 million to the police there. Mr. Bernicki has already commented on, since 2020, our police salaries have raised 38% in that time. And I also want to comment one other thing. There's, and this is the one that I think is a little distasteful, quite honestly, because I have a lot of pride in our Dunwoody Police Department. I think they serve this community with pride and excellence. And there's a comment on there that our police department cannot respond to routine calls in a timely manner. I think that's a really not only unfounded but cheap shot at our police department. Just to back up the average response time for police calls, emergency calls, is 6 minutes and 13 seconds. The average response time for the police for non-emergency calls is 6 minutes and 18 seconds. That does not, to me, represent a problem in response times. So I have another thing I want to talk about, because I talk about our streets and how horrible they are and how there's potholes everywhere and our streets are in horrible condition, okay? Listen, since incorporation 15 years ago, the city developed a road repaving plan. We have repaved 75% of the streets in the city of Dunwoody since that time. The remaining 25% are on schedule to be completed in the next 5 years. But wait, there's more, okay? Dunwoody streets are in their best condition they have ever been in their history. And that is not just me talking, okay? Every 5 years, the city hires a company, an independent company, to go out with very technical advanced equipment, the laser truck. It drives around, it maps every single square inch of road in the city of Dunwoody, assessing the condition, cracks, potholes, everything. Every road is assigned a score. The total score that this was just completed just this summer, and the score received by the total road network was the highest it's been in the city's history. So our roads are in the best condition they've ever been. Now, am I saying there aren't problems out there? That routine maintenance is always going to be an issue. I don't care what kind of system you have. You're always going to have routine maintenance issues. But I checked with our public works director. There is not a backlog of work orders. We are well on top of everything. So the assessment, the statement that is not true, and I'm sorry, Bob, I know. They're stating that the claim of the real cost of the bonds is $120 million. Okay, that's already been addressed. The only way that the total cost of the bonds will get to $120 million is with an 8.27 interest rate. Hasn't happened. Well, first of all, that's above what is authorized, but we're not even going to get close to 8%. If you go in the worst case scenario, 8% is about $118 million. Again, that's been already addressed. We're never going to get anywhere close to that because we haven't in 20 years. One last, gosh, I got so much fun. I'm going to do one last comment, and I promise I'll shut up, Bob. Okay? Because there is, you know, I've heard a lot of people, why did we incorporate as a city of Dunwoody? And you know, and I heard about taxes. Well, if the only reason you voted yes for the city of Dunwoody was for low taxes, guess what? Mission accomplished. We pay in Dunwoody the lowest taxes in all of DeKalb County. That includes unincorporated DeKalb County. If we stayed independent and we're unincorporated DeKalb County pays 5.657 mils more in taxes than the city of Dunwoody residents. Okay, that's real important. In addition to that, we heard a lot about the tax digest and things. Your property values are frozen. Okay, so if your home value of your home goes up, if you're a Dunwoody homeowner, your city taxes paid remains the same. There's a claim that we've raised taxes for the past 5 years. In the history of the city, there's been one tax increase. That was in 2022 from 2.74 mils to the cap of 3.04 mils. Okay. In addition to that, Dunwoody homeowners get a 1 mil exemption, so it even brings the taxes lower. Here's an important point. If the bond is approved by the voters, the additional mil is added to your tax rate. Dunwoody homeowners will still pay the lowest taxes in all of DeKalb County with the bond millage included. And I think that is important for voters to know. I also want to, and my final point is this, and it's related to this. Listen, we voted to become a city not only for taxes, but to improve the services the city gets. And the flag that was carried, then you know, was the 3 Ps, paving, parks and police, right? I've already addressed the parks and, I'm sorry, the paving and the police, right? We've done a good job. Parks, we've been very resourceful to do what we can, but we are far from where we need to be, okay? The Trust for Public Land has done analysis of this. The average park acreage per 1,000 residents in this country is 38.9 acres, okay? They have a recommendation that to be a good city, you should have 10 acres per 1,000 residents. The city of Dunwoody has 4 per 1,000 residents. We are far below where we need to be, okay? Now, we cannot be blamed for what we inherited from DeKalb County, but I think we can be held accountable for what we do moving forward, and that is the purpose of this park bond. The residents have said they want these amenities, and we're trying to provide them for them. So I got a lot more, but I'll
Tom, do you have, I'll give you a final word and then.
I think one thing, I thought it was in the bylaws or somewhere that no council person was allowed to advertise for the bonds.
I'm not advertising. I'm providing facts. My name, by the way, you do not surrender your First Amendment right to free speech as an elected official. And I would like to think that the citizens of this community would like to know the facts.
Thank you. All right, hold on 1 second. So yeah, sir, you have one comment you wanted to make.
I would just like to take this in a slightly different direction. It's interesting to see the squabbles here tonight. I really think that if this bond goes through, there's a strong possibility we set ourselves on a course for a 20-year squabble. 20-year squabble, okay? And the reason for that is that the thing that is lacking here is definition of what you're going to do with the money. Right, it could be 20, Jay, it could be 20, it could be 40. Spring 2024, it might only 60, we don't know. There's a list of concepts, excuse me, in broad arenas, but there are no specifics. There's a list of intentions that the current council says, well, we're going to do these trails and we're going to do these parks. But, the language, and so contractually, there's no obligation to do those projects at all. And the language even that, is wrapped around this intention says, the city reserves the right to modify these plans or projects based on the needs of the city, right? There's no contractual quid pro quo here that if we sign up for 60 million, that we are going to get X in return.
It's like they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
I know when I go to buy a house, right, I go to take out a mortgage, that's the parallel, that's the analog that's been provided here. That I go to, raise the money, get the loan for a specific house. It's that house, it's got 4 bedrooms, it's got X thousand square feet. I go to the mortgage company and there's, everybody's agreed. This project here is totally lacking in specifics. It's just concept. It's 60 million in return for a concept of developing trails, parks, green space. I am very much a fan of particularly green space acquisition, and I think debt has a role to play for sure in the future of the city. The problem I have is that I think this bond referendum is half-baked. The specifics should be developed, and I would prefer to see this bond referendum delayed onto the next cycle, so that we can sit down and say, it's this park, and it's 2 soccer fields. No, it's not. I think there's a disconnect here. By my standards, the specifications of these things laid out some, specifics, so that we can sit down and say, in 10 years' time, did we deliver? Are we good stewards? If you don't tell us what we're getting, if you don't tell us what you're going to get in return for 60 million.
Young lady, which one?
Hey, board members, if you'll stick around for a minute.
I think that